I'm Chris Denogean. In our first video, Essential Drum Miking Part 1, we covered a basic drum mic setup. So that included a kick drum mic, a snare drum mic, and a pair of overheads. So today we just want to add to that. We want to do a hi-hat mic, and we're going to close mic the toms as well. The cool thing is we're going to add a twist to this. We're going to also add a second set of tom mics. So we're going to have some dynamic mics first, and then we'll throw in some condenser mics on the toms so you can hear the difference. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the hi-hat mic. Today I'm using an ADX51, and when I'm miking a hi-hat, I like to have it about 3 or 4 inches above the hats. And these 51s are pretty sensitive, so I want to make sure I have them away from the snare drum so I can have as little bleed as possible. Another tip that I like to do is put it right in the middle of the area of the hi-hat cymbal on top. So I don't want it too much onto the outside because it can get a little bit too washy, and sometimes it can get distorted. You can play with the angles yourself and get the desired tone that you like. One thing that's really going to take an effect on this is your hi-hat technique. And what I want to do now is just demonstrate what this mic sounds like on its own. So that gives you a pretty good idea of where you can start with hi-hats. Let's get into the tom mics. I'm using a pair of Audix D2s on my toms, and I'm also using clips to hold them in place. You can also use a mic stand. These clips are really cool because they're light, they don't get in the way, and they're really quick to set up, and I can adjust them really easily. Now, as far as placement, what I like to do is I like to have the mics themselves pointing right to the center of that tom, so I get a nice stick attack, just like that. So basically, when that drummer's hitting it, I'm picking up the sound of him hitting that drum. One thing I also take into consideration when I'm miking my rack toms is how close it is to the drum head itself. The closer it is, the more low frequencies you're going to bring out of that drum. That's called proximity effect. It's basically the closer in proximity it is to that event of it being hit, you're going to get more low end. Now in rack toms, I tend to not want as much low end as I would on a different drum. So I kind of balance it out. The further away it is, the more natural it's going to sound. But I like to have that balance right there and just get a nice stick attack sound. Let's go ahead and listen to what it sounds like. That gives you a good starting point on tom miking. So let's talk about the floor tom mics. Let's take a look. Today I'm using an Audix D4. I really dig this mic because it's small, but it gets a lot of low end, a lot of bottom, which I need on floor toms. When I'm miking a floor tom, I will aim it at the center, but not directly in the center like I would a rack tom, because I don't necessarily need the stick attack as much as I would on a rack tom. So I'll usually aim it kind of in this area so I get a little bit more of that bottom popping out. That's a good place to start for me. You can adjust it if you want a little more ring and a little more bottom on that floor tom, or you can come in a little. That depends on the style of music, it depends on the drum, and it depends on the player. Another thing you want to take into consideration is that it's not aiming in at your snare drum, so you get a little less bleed. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what this sounds like. So that gives you a good idea of what the tom mic sounds like. I also wanted to mention that I'm using a mic clip. You can use a mic stand too. It's kind of a preference choice. I like these clips because they're lightweight and I have a lot of flexibility with my adjustments of the mic itself. I also want to mention that your overhead mics are going to dramatically affect your tom sounds as well. So you want to make sure you take that into consideration also. Let's take a listen to the hi-hat and tom mics with the whole kit. Now we have micro Ds on all the toms. These mics are a little bit different than the D2 and the D4. They're condensers, so they're going to have a little bit more sensitivity. But a lot of people prefer the sound of condenser mics on toms because of the detail that you can get. My mic technique stays the same on rack toms, regardless of the mic choice. And for me, I like a lot of stick attack when someone's hitting these toms. So I'm going to focus on the area where the drummer is actually going to hit that tom. What's great about the micro Ds is they're so small you can get full adjustment. You can move them up away from the drum or down if you want a really, really direct sound. I kind of split the difference, and I think that's where you should start as well. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what they sound like. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the floor tom. Once again, this mic is using a clip, so I have some full adjustment as far as miking this drum itself. My technique doesn't change with floor tom miking. I still like it to be a little bit outside of the center of the hit, so I get some of that ring and low end from the drum. The great part is I can adjust the height to wherever I want. So if I want more of a natural sound that's a little further away, I can get that with this mic. Let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like. So it gives you a great example of what the micro Ds sound like on a drum set. So we've accomplished miking the hi-hat and the toms. This is a great way to have a full kit sound with close miking and the basic mic setup. We did 2 different tom setups as well. I want to talk real quick and just review what we did. With the hi-hat mic, I like to have it away from the snare, in the middle of the hat, about 3 or 4 inches above that hi-hat. That'll give you a nice starting point. On the rack toms, I like to have those mics facing the center of the drum so I can get that stick attack hitting that tom. And on the floors, I don't mind them back a little so I can hear the life of those toms and the low end bellowing through. One of the things you're going to want to consider is that your overhead mics are going to dramatically affect your tom sound as well. Now in our first video, I did an XY pattern, so today I decided to spread that out a little bit and I did an NOS pattern. If you don't know what those are, you're going to want to check out different types of overhead mic patterns and experiment with those on your own. Let's talk about our mic choices. So today we added a hi-hat mic. We used the Audix 51. What I like about this mic is that it has 150 hertz roll-off, and it also has a 10 dB pad, so it's a pretty versatile mic. You can use it on overheads, which I did. You can also use it on acoustic instruments and many other things. Now with our tom mics, we started with an Audix D2. This mic's very warm and has a tight polar pattern, so that means I have to do less in the end when I'm mixing. Now on our floor toms, we used an Audix D4. What's great about this mic is you can see by the size of it, it doesn't take up a lot of room, but it gets some massive low end. Now all of these mics right here are available in a drum pack called the DP7. That also includes some extra mics as well. The D6, which everybody knows for kick, and the I5, which we also used for snare. We used all these mics in today's demonstration, as well as an extra Audix 51 for the hi-hat. Now, I'd also like to talk about the micro Ds that we used on the toms. These mics are extremely versatile and really, really small. They don't get in the way. I've used them on cymbals, I've used them on percussion, but they sound exceptional on toms. And they have a really tight pattern, and they're very, very musical. Now, for more information on the micro Ds and the DP7 pack that I mentioned, you'll want to go to audixusa.com, and you can get more information there. Now, let's listen to what close miking can do for your drums.